Imagine this. You own a property, maybe for over 10 years. It's where your business operates. Then suddenly you hear it's being demolished by people you don't know, claiming they have a court order, but an order that doesn't even name you, the owner. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It actually happened recently in Lagos, Nigeria. It involves a company called Nest Food Limited, and interestingly, the prominent figure Peter Obi got directly involved. Today we're doing a deep dive into this whole situation. Our sources. Well, we're drawing directly from Peter Obi's own account of events, and also insights from the senior advocate of Nigeria representing the company. This all comes from a recent YouTube video transcript. Our mission today is really to unpack this, look at the layers, from the shock of the demolition itself to the legal stuff happening behind the scenes, and maybe what it tells us about property rights and, well, the rule of law over there. Okay, let's unpack this. What happens when the very ground you stand on seems to be pulled out from under you, quite literally? So the story starts with Peter Obi. He's just back from the U.S. And his younger brother tells him, look, some agency wants to talk about land owned by Nest Food Limited, land they've had for over 10 years, maybe even 15?
Yeah, a significant amount of time. That's important context.
Definitely. But the initial warning was pretty stark. His brother says people had basically jumped into it, claiming they owned it now. They apparently had a court injunction and were saying demolition was imminent. Right away, Peter Obi told his brother, you need to go to court.
Sensible advice. Get the legal process started immediately.
But here's where it gets, well, really intense. The very next day, Peter Obi gets another call from his brother, and the news is much worse. The roof, already gone. 2 or 3 tractors are there, just demolishing the place rapidly.
Route that fast, overnight.
Apparently so. People living on the property were chased out. And when the company's own reps tried to get in, they were just refused entry, blocked completely.
That's quite aggressive. No attempt at formal eviction process, it seems.
It sounds like it. So Peter Obi, he flies straight from Abuja to Lagos, drives directly to the site himself. He goes right up to the people doing the demolition and asks, then, where's your authorization? Let me see the court injunction.
Directly confronting them. What did they say?
Well, this is the strange part. He found this surprising lack of clarity. The demolition crew. They claimed they didn't even know who the owner was.
They didn't know the owner of the property they were demolishing.
That's what they apparently said, just following orders. And Obi noted, initially, there were no proper demolition orders visible, no safety personnel, nothing. Then, somehow, a safety order appeared while he was standing there.
That sounds convenient. The timing, I mean.
Exactly. And here's a really crucial point you touched on earlier.
The injunction itself.
Yes. Peter Obi specifically asked to see the court injunction they were supposedly acting on. And when he saw it, it explicitly said the lawsuit was filed against unknown person.
Right, and that's the immediate, massive red flag. You have a registered company, Nest Food Limited, owning this land for over a decade, presumably with documentation. How can you possibly get a court order for demolition against an unknown person for that specific known property? It just fundamentally doesn't align with, proper legal process.
It really raises questions.
Serious questions about how that order was obtained in the first place. Was the court given the full picture? Seems unlikely.
And the visual impact was stark. Obi described it as happening between yesterday and today. Roof gone, everything being torn down. He expressed concern about his words were, level of rascality and lawlessness. Again, that's his perspective from the source material.
Understandable reaction, given the circumstances he described. And then there was the issue of who was actually behind it all, right?
Yes. 3 people eventually showed up, claiming they were acting for the owner. But when asked, they refused to name the owner.
So the people doing the demolition don't know the owner, and the people representing the supposed owner won't name them.
Exactly. Peter Obi pointed out the irony. Everyone knows who he is, his name is public knowledge, but the supposed owner orchestrating the demolition remained anonymous.
A very opaque situation, which of course leads us to the legal fight back.
Right. This is where the senior advocate of Nigeria, the Shuan, representing Nest Food Limited, comes into the picture. Their goal, stop the demolition.
And the SANS team discovered this whole thing quite suddenly too, didn't they?
Yes. According to the SAN, they only got a call on a Friday about an execution happening. They had absolutely no prior knowledge of any lawsuit about this property before that call.
No notice, no chance to defend Nest Food's interest in court beforehand. That's a major issue.
And when they dug into it, they confirmed what Peter Obi saw. The suit was filed against persons unknown.
Which, from a legal standpoint, if you know or can easily find out who owns the property, suing persons unknown is, well, It's often seen as a way to potentially circumvent notifying the actual interested parties.
Okay, so what did the SAN actually do once they found this out? What were their first steps?
Well, they immediately went to the court registry, did a deep dive, and they found the other party had started the case using something called an originating summons, which is typically for, let's say, less complex matters, often where facts aren't heavily disputed initially.
Okay.
And crucially, the claim wasn't for title or ownership of the land, it was a claim for possession.
You mentioned that distinction earlier, possession versus title. Can you break that down again? Why is claiming only possession significant here, especially when they're, demolishing the place?
It's a really critical point. Possession is basically the right to physically occupy or control the property. Think of it like holding the keys, being there. Title or ownership is the full legal right, the ultimate proof you own it, like the deed.
Got it.
Claiming only possession is interesting because legally, just having possession doesn't automatically give you the right to, say, knock down buildings or claim you own it outright, especially if someone else holds the registered title. It's a lesser claim, in a way.
So the SAN saw this and moved fast.
Extremely fast. This was all happening the day before Peter Obi even got to the site. They filed a flurry of applications. First, an application to have Nest Food Limited formally joined as a party to the case. Basically saying, hey, court, the unknown person you've been dealing with, that's actually us, the owners. Here's our proof. And they attached an affidavit with all the key documents, the deed of assignment, corporate papers, everything proving ownership.
Okay, so making the unknown known. Smart. What else?
Then a separate application to completely set aside the original court order, the one authorizing the demolition or whatever action was happening.
On what grounds?
Arguing it was obtained improperly, essentially telling the court, you weren't given the full facts, you didn't know about us, the actual owners, this order shouldn't stand. They even raised concerns that the proof of service shown to the court might have been faked. Maybe someone snapped a picture pretending to serve papers, then took them away. They allege that possibility.
Wow. So challenging the very foundation of the order.
Precisely. And crucially, to stop the bulldozer.
Right, the immediate problem.
They filed an application for a stay of execution. That's a direct request to the court. Pause everything. Stop the enforcement of this order right now while we sort this out. Specifically aimed at halting the demolition.
Makes sense.
And beyond that, they also have requests for an injunction pending and asked to convert the whole case into a full pleading session, which means moving away from the quick originating summons process to a full trial where everyone presents detailed arguments and evidence.
So a multi-pronged legal counterattack, basically.
Absolutely. Covering all the bases, identify the client, challenge the order, stop the immediate action, and prepare for a full fight if needed.
So where did that leave things? The ASAN filed all this. Did the other side know?
Yes. The Salmon specifically told the lawyer for the other side about all these pending applications. And they basically expressed an expectation of professional courtesy. Now that we've filed all this, surely you'll wait for the court to rule before continuing the demolition. The property isn't going anywhere, right?
A reasonable expectation, usually.
It's a fundamental legal principle, really. Once a party is properly put on notice, meaning they officially know there's a legal challenge underway, especially one questioning the very order they're acting on, the standard practice is to pause. The court needs to decide on these new applications. The dynamic has completely changed. The unknown person is now very much known, legally represented, and has documentation.
It really highlights the tension between legal process and, physical action on the ground.
Exactly.
Now, Peter Obi also talked about the broader picture, didn't he? Beyond just this one incident.
He did. He expressed this wider concern, lamenting that incidents like this perceived lawlessness or rascality in how local investors are treated.
He felt it undermines efforts to attract foreign investment.
That was his point, yes. If local businesses face this kind of uncertainty and seemingly arbitrary action, how can you confidently invite foreign investors who rely even more heavily on predictable legal frameworks and property rights?
It definitely connects to a bigger picture.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive really underscores how vital clear property documentation is, and strict adherence to due process, judicial integrity. All of these are crucial for establishing unstable investment climate. When you see a swift demolition like this, apparently based on an order against an unknown person for a known property, it naturally raises questions about trust in the system.
Yeah, it does.
And it poses a real challenge, doesn't it? How do legal systems effectively enforce court orders, which they need to do, while also guaranteeing fundamental rights like due process, especially when you have these unknown person scenarios? It's a tricky balance.
We've certainly unpacked a lot here. A really fascinating, but also deeply concerning incident. You've got these complex legal maneuvers colliding head-on with physical demolition, property left in ruins, and these fundamental questions just hanging there about ownership, accountability, and the rule of law itself.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And maybe a question for you listening. In today's world, information flies around so fast, but figuring out the actual truth can be hard. So how absolutely critical is it that our legal processes are transparent and that property ownership is, unequivocally provable, especially when you're talking about major assets?
And maybe consider this too. What are the ripple effects? The long-term consequences for a country's economy, its reputation, when the security of property rights seems vulnerable. Vulnerable to these kinds of swift, maybe unverified actions, affecting both the people already investing there and those thinking about it from abroad. Lots to